For a director who is known for time travel, dreamscapes, and superhero universes, perhaps realism isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Christopher Nolan. But once you get under the hood of even his most fantastical films, you'll notice they are rooted in just that. Whether it's Inception, a film that portrayed the chaotic and surreal world of our subconscious with a clear logic, or Interstellar, where theoretical physicist Kip Thorne aided him in bringing a mathematical order to time-shifting space travel and wormholes. Even the Batman films stand out from the genre for being more gritty and matter-of-fact, and are committed to portraying outlandish figures with a raw, psychological authenticity.
Now there's a Batman.
It's this same ethos that makes a moment like this so memorable. You would assume there was some computer trickery at play here, but no, this stunt was done for real. Nolan likes to avoid CG wherever he can, much like fellow celluloid enthusiast Quentin Tarantino.
Back in the all or nothing days, Vanishing Point days, the Dirty Mary Crazy Larry days, real cars smashing into real cars, real dumb people driving.
Most superhero films are green screen circuses, and compared to those films in terms of on-screen destruction, the Batman films are fairly stripped back, unlike you get the idea. Instead, the power of these sequences relies on the reality of the stunts. Nolan wants us to feel it, like we're physically there. It helps, of course, that these sequences are shot with 70mm IMAX cameras, giving you an unparalleled level of immersion. When Nolan began photography on The Dark Knight, there were only 4 of these cameras in the world, and by the end, there were only 3. The camera work is also relatively modest. In Interstellar, they wanted to replicate the feel of NASA IMAX documentaries, and built sets with the same restrictions those real locations would have. And a frequent technique is strapping the camera to the side of a spacecraft, like a GoPro. It gives you the sense that the camera is just put in a practical position to capture the action, like a documentary crew would. Though, to really distinguish between his earlier work and today's,
I gotta get me one of those.
you'd have to look at pre-IMAX Nolan, in something like Batman Begins, where the action isn't quite as memorable. Fight scenes have cameras whipping around, almost like a Bourne film. But from the opening of The Dark Knight, you could tell Nolan's action aesthetic had evolved, with more economical camera work and editing. There's 2 core reasons why. First, the sheer weight of the camera makes movement more challenging. And second, because the images are so impressive, it would feel like a sin not to let them breathe.
Let's go, pal! I'm making a withdrawal here.
The truck flip is cut with just 2 angles. Or this similar stunt from The Dark Knight Rises uses just 1. And the shot plays out here too, in the iconic zero gravity sequence from Inception, which was done by rotating the set, a technique used in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Of course, you can't do everything for real, as much as Nolan would probably like to. In the truck flip sequence, there are moments where other techniques are brought into the mix. First, there's model work. This moment was too much to capture on location, so miniatures were used. Nolan uses models consistently, because even if they're a few stops away from pure reality, they are still physical, tangible objects. One major part of this sequence had to be achieved with CG, but it's still spliced together with a stunt at the end. Nolan believes that adding real elements helps ground the more elaborate moments and still sells the reality to the viewer. Like this scene on the streets of Paris. There's a randomness to things like explosions that you can't predict. and CG is used to support and enhance what's already there. In this stadium sequence, over 10,000 real extras were there on location, and to boost numbers, they were multiplied and expanded in post. In Dunkirk, however, he chose to even avoid that, preferring to use more old-fashioned techniques like cardboard cutouts on sticks. Perversely, perhaps, Nolan will often ask his team what would they have done before CG. It's as if he's got an obsession with going back in time or something. Another compromise when wanting everything there on set is you can't have exact period authenticity. David Fincher wanted this in Zodiac, recreating 60s San Francisco with extensive use of CG and blue screens. But in Dunkirk, for the main destroyer, and had his actors in the air, with the actual pilot operating from the back. And for the more dramatic shots, they built a rig by the edge of a cliff. Even his imaginary worlds are often shot on location, so actors have to wade through freezing water and deal with real wind and ice. Of course, you can't actually have actors go into space, but instead of using green screens for what appears outside the spacecraft, he used front projection. This way, the actors don't have to try and imagine what they're seeing, and risk not being on the same page, or in the same film. They can all view the spectacle together and have shared, emotionally resonant moments, and that makes it.
Sometimes when you're asked to justify these things like not using green screen, you have to just bring it down to, well, it's so much more fun to do it. It's fun for the actors, it's fun for me. There's nothing more dispiriting than when you turn up to work and there's just a green screen with a couple of actors in front of it. It's really, the magic's not there. So trying to do these things for real, trying to use real locations. I've always preferred real locations to sets for the same reason. There's a feeling of reality, there's a feeling of being somewhere that matters.